Hey guys, Shy Got Picks here. Hope everyone's doing well, having a good week. I know it's been a minute since I last posted, but I just want to start off by saying sorry for the long break. It's been a tough couple of weeks. It's been really busy, with my career and keeping up with social media is a little difficult sometimes, especially making all the content by yourself. No excuse, of course, but I do really appreciate everyone who stuck rocking with me. Of course, moving forward, I know I need to build a consistent schedule and a routine so I can get consistent content every single week without missing a beat. That's the goal from here on out. More consistency, more value, and more winners, of course. Now, with that being said, we're back with a good card. UFC Usman versus Buckley. It's a wild matchup, and this card has some really interesting spots for us to dive into. We'll go over the full card breakdown, and without further ado, let's get right into it. For the first fight in the card, we got Vanessa Demopoulos versus Jamey Lyn-Horth. Demopoulos comes into this 11-7, 36 years old, 5'2", with a 59.5-inch reach. Meanwhile, Horth is 7-2, 35 years old, 5'7", with a 66-inch reach. And if I'm really being honest with you, I'm not really interested in this fight whatsoever. I'm not going to watch the tape. I'm not going to say I don't think I'm going to. I'm going to tell you straight up, I'm not going to. I think she's been riding on some really questionable decision wins that I don't think she actually really won. I don't think she really shows skill. And I'm talking about Demopoulos, of course. And I think moving up a weight class and, after a loss and just 2 months ago, I think that the UFC are basically just telling her, I think, take this fight or you're going to get cut, that kind of thing, I don't think Horth is elite whatsoever. I think she keeps on skyrocketing to negative 600 odds, and it's really, really weird. I think she's slow. She's awkward. She doesn't really, she doesn't really think 3 moves ahead kind of thing. She just does 1s and 2s, sort of say. But she does have fundamentals, that's for sure. She's bigger, and she does throw clean strikes, and that's really all you really need. And she's at least consistent kind of thing, and that's really all you need when it comes to Vanessa, because she's very erratic, short-limbed swings kind of thing, Horth has the edge just about really just standing there, in my opinion. But when it comes to, what it really matters is the grappling. Vanessa's BJJ looks decent on paper, but in fights, she really resorts to guard and passive stalling, rarely defending takedowns or scrambling up, really, Somehow she's won fights by laying down there, and I don't really think that's going to be a recipe for her regarding facing Jamey Lyn-Horth. I think Jamey Lyn only needs to execute simple blueprint takedowns, top control, stay busy, 3 solid takedowns, 1 per round, and she racks up the rounds without really blinking, in my opinion. At the end of the day, I think this is going to be the last paycheck for Vanessa. At least I hope so. Unless Horth completely misplays this, I got Jamey Lyn-Horth by decision. I think actually all of her fights go by decision. I think her average fight is 15 minutes. So I got Jamey Lyn-Horth by decision here. Up next on the card, we got Phil Rowe versus Ange Loosa. Phil Rowe comes to this with a record of 10-4, 33 years old, stands at 6'3" tall, and has an 80.5-inch reach. He's facing Ange Loosa, who has a record of 10-3. He's 30 years old, stands at 5'10" with a 74-inch reach. Listen, Rowe is a very physical athlete, massive for the division, with sharp boxing and legit power. When he's using his reach and jab, he looks like a real big problem, but the issue is he never really sticks to it. The moment he lands, he abandons the range game and crashes in the pocket where his defense absolutely falls apart. He's fast and dangerous for sure, but he loses composure, I think, and his quote-unquote tall man defense gets him hit, a lot, really. Despite never being finished, his chin isn't exactly reliable, in my opinion. On the other side, Loosa is a compact counter striker. He struggled with long fighters before because he spends too much time waiting to counter. That being said, he rolls very well with shots and doesn't take as much clean damage as it really looks like, as it really appears, I want to say. But he's not winning rounds by just waiting. The key here is the wrestling, I think. Loosa shoots often, and while his top control is definitely not elite whatsoever, it might be enough against Rowe, I think, who has awful takedown defense and is too comfortable playing guard, giving rounds off of his back. Rowe definitely has, the more dangerous tools, but I think he's his own enemy kind of thing. And Loosa is the kind of guy who can quietly win rounds while Rowe quietly makes mistakes and loses rounds, sort of say. So my pick here is Loosa by decision, probably by landing counters in the pocket and mixing in just enough wrestling to edge this one out. Up next on the card, we got Ricky Simon versus Cameron Smotherman. Simon comes into this 21-6, 32 years old, 5'6" with a 69-inch reach. Smotherman comes into this 12-5, 27 years old, 5'9" with a 69-inch reach. Honestly, if you had to handpick a matchup for Simon to get back in the win column, this is absolutely it. Smotherman might have cleaner striking, absolutely, but his chin is shaky and his defense is just really not there. He doesn't move his head whatsoever. He keeps dropping his hands low, especially when he's worried about a takedown. And in this fight, he absolutely should be worried about a takedown. Obviously, his takedown defense is a major liability, especially in this fight. He got taken down, I mean, honestly, at will on the regional scene. Go back and watch his Fury FC fights. He got out-grappled by guys nowhere near Ricky's level. Even in the UFC, Mando controlled him for almost the entire fight. And until Cam survived just long enough to take advantage of a gas tank collapse, really. Against Kuse, or Kus, however you pronounce it, he arguably lost again despite being gifted a decision. Even when he looked, okay against City, it was mostly because City was shooting without setups. Ricky's wrestling may have dipped a bit lately, but his output hasn't, absolutely not. He still averages over 10 takedown attempts per fight, and unlike City, he knows how to chain wrestle. And here's the thing, Ricky doesn't even need to strike to win this. He could, and he might even catch Cam slacking in this, like in his last fight, hands down, bang, overhand, right hand lands clean. But the smarter path, obviously, is drag Cam into deeper water, and, obviously just drown him. No reason to take unnecessary damage, especially with a late replacement like this. Cam simply doesn't have the tools to stop Ricky from, imposing his game, especially not the wrestling and the grappling and the chain wrestling. I think this is an easy one to choose, but I got Ricky Simone by decision. I think this is an easy one to pick, but I actually do think that Simon gets a submission done here. I think he actually finds a way to finish this one. First round, second round, pretty early. I got Simon by submission, probably even first round. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes a decision, of course, but I don't think so. I think he'll find a way and really just outclass him in the grappling. So give me Simon by submission. Up next in the card, we got Cody Durden facing Jose Ochoa. Durden comes into this with a record of 17-7-1, 34 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. Meanwhile, Ochoa is 7-1, 24 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. I usually stay away from backing young prospects as favorites, especially right after a loss. But in this case, I think I have to make an exception. I think Ochoa bounces back strong here, and I think he actually finds a finish with against Durden. Durden's been leaning into his striking a lot lately, and honestly, I think that's a big problem for him. He's aggressive and willing to brawl, but I think he throws wild hooks and leaves his chin really up in the air and hangs up out in the pocket way too long. Against guys like Silva, Schnell, and Van, he got lit up, let's be honest. Either finished or clearly outclassed in the striking. That's exactly where Ochoa shines. His hands are heavier, his technique is cleaner, and he does serious work to the body. Knees in the clinch, nasty front kicks, and solid body shots. And I think that's the key here because Durden's gas tank has cracked in multiple fights. Ochoa doesn't need to KO him cleanly here. He just needs to start chipping away, and Durden will start to fade. And I do understand that this is Ochoa's debut. I do understand that Ochoa's debut definitely was not great. But Lohner, let's be honest, Kavanaugh that's a brutal first matchup. Let's be real. He's fast, elusive, always moving. Ochoa couldn't land punches because Lohner stayed out of the range. That won't be a problem here against Durden. I think Durden's much more stationary, and he actually invites the kind of ugly fight Ochoa really wants. Footwork, power, and pressure all lean Ochoa's way here. But I think the wild card here is the wrestling. Durden's wrestling is decent. He's built a whole career off of guys with bad takedown defense. He'll shoot, all fight long. And if Ochoa hasn't, fixed that up, it could be a big problem here. That being said, we've seen, what we've seen from Ochoa looks promising. Strong hips, solid base. Even went from, for a takedown himself against Lohner. But since moving to shoot the box in 2023, he's clearly made strides in the grappling, and that's where the finish comes in. Durden's sloppy. He shoots sloppy when he's tired or hurt, and he gives his neck up, and he's done this in multiple fights. I think Ochoa is going to hurt him to the body or in some type of exchange where Durden, panic wrestles and I think the sub will be there. Ochoa's BJJ has been improving, and I think he capitalizes on this. It's a bounce back spot, no doubt, but this matchup plays right into Ochoa's strengths, I think. Give me Ochoa, I think maybe round 2. Give me Ochoa by submission. Up next on the card, we got Malcolm Wellmaker facing Kris Moutinho. Malcolm Wellmaker comes into this 9-0, 31 years old, 5'10" with a 71.5-inch reach. Meanwhile, Moutinho is 14-6, 32 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach. Listen, I know a lot of people are hyped about Malcolm Wellmaker, and let's be honest, he absolutely does have some serious power, but I don't think I'm really completely sold on him. I do like his story. I do like him a lot. I do follow him on Instagram. It's really cool how he was able to, quit his job like he said he was able to, like he said he was going to, That being said, though, I think this matchup is absolutely built for him to win, and I think win big, actually, If you look at Kris, this guy's absolutely tough, and that's really all you can talk about when it comes to him. He's got cardio, and his chin's been tested for sure. And let's not overrate surviving against O'Malley either. He's got hit a lot and very cleanly. His defense just isn't there, and in every fight he walks forward with his chin up in the air. That's the exact type of opponent you don't want against someone with one punch knockout power like Wellmaker. Wellmaker's power is legit. He can absolutely shut the lights out. And really the concern when it comes to Wellmaker is his pacing. He doesn't throw in volume. He's mostly single shots. And even when he's winning, that's led to closer fights than it should be. He hasn't shown he can handle a high-paced war yet. We haven't really seen his gas tank be tested under pressure. That's where things could absolutely get weird. If Kris somehow survives a big first round and turns up the pace, we might learn a lot more about Wellmaker's cardio. He did go 5 rounds in the regional scene, but it was at his pace, of course, his control. Totally different from someone dragging you into chaos when you're tired. Still, I think UFC knows exactly what they're doing with this matchup. Kris is aggressive but reckless. He breaks guys who fade, but against someone with Wellmaker's power, walking through fire just isn't a smart strategy. I think my prediction is that Wellmaker lands clean, and I think that's basically it. I think we got another highlight reel KO, probably early. Negative 2,000, negative 1,800 is absolutely ridiculous, let's be honest. So if you really think about it, the value side is on the Moutinho side, and really maybe even the fight goes the distance in the fact that he didn't get knocked out by O'Malley. So let's be honest, though, we got to go Wellmaker knockout at these odds especially, but the value just absolutely isn't there, though. But I got Wellmaker knockout first round. Up next on the card, we got Michael Chiesa facing Court McGee. Chiesa comes to this 18-7, 36 years old, 6'1" with a 75.5-inch reach. Meanwhile, McGee comes to this 23-13, 40 years old, 5'11", 75-inch reach. This one probably won't be pretty, but it's interesting. You've got two aging grapplers, both grinding types who know how to fight, ugly fights. Chiesa looked done after that Kevin Holland loss. His takedown entries were slow, clumsy, and he didn't look confident, but credit to him and credit where it's due. He bounced back with a solid performance. He still looks old and a bit stiff, but his grappling is absolutely still intact. If he gets on your back, he's absolutely dangerous. The issue is just, getting there. Let's be honest. His wrestling has clearly declined. His shots are slow. They're predictable. And sometimes he still times them decently, though. That's the thing. On the feet, Chiesa always has been awkward. His striking isn't pretty, but the threat of the takedown, plus his long frame, makes it really oddly effective. He really doesn't like getting hit anymore, but that's probably not going to really matter here. I think Court McGee isn't really known for his power, especially not at 40. McGee is definitely showing signs of wear too. His chin's not where it used to be, but Chiesa is not a knockout threat either. He's only secured one knockdown in his entire UFC career, where McGee shines is with his volume, his basic fundamentals. He has a solid point, a striker who sticks to the basics and keeps a steady pace. The grappling exchanges are what makes this match really compelling. Court has poor takedown defense, but excellent scrambling. He's hard to hold down, even if you do get him to the ground, if you can hold him down kind of thing, This puts Chiesa in a tough spot. He might get into dominant positions, but you'll have to work for every single second of control. Flipping it around, McGee's grappling offense probably won't get him far either. Chiesa is the better pure grappler here, of course, if Court starts shooting, he can actually play into Chiesa's game. Chiesa can scramble well, turn defensive positions into offense. Striking will probably be weird, competitive mess. McGee has a cleaner technique and better volume, but Chiesa's awkwardness might win him some moments, especially with those strange, timed entries and clinch exchanges. Honestly, I think this one can go either way. I think the betting line is really far too wide. Chiesa's recent wins aren't really super impressive, and McGee isn't more competitive than the people give him credit to be, But overall, I think Chiesa has enough left in the tank to edge this one out. Court's gonna give him enough of a fight, but I think Chiesa will find enough control time and awkward striking moments to squeak by. So that being said, I do got Chiesa by decision, but expect this one to be greasy, slow, and super competitive. So if you're looking at a betting line, I mean, let's be honest, -330, that's tough. Maybe the McGee plus 3.5 is looking better here, but I got Chiesa and I got him by decision. Up next on the card, we got Paul Craig versus Rodolfo Bellato. Paul Craig comes into this 17-9-1. 37 years old, 6'3" with a 76-inch reach. Bellato is 12-2-1, 29 years old, 6'3" with a 77.5-inch reach. Now, if we cut through all the noise on Paul Craig versus Bellato, of course, there's a lot of talk, especially around the quote-unquote herpes headline. But here's the absolute truth. It was just a cold sore that was just mixed up in a translation. Of course, it's technically herpes, but it's not the STD that everybody assumes. It's healed. He didn't need antibiotics. It has zero bearing in this fight. Literally, let's be honest. Literally, it's just he just happened to. If he put cold sore, no one would be thinking like this, But onto the fight. Bellato is wild. He's chinny. He has bad striking defense. Fight IQ that makes you absolutely super duper nervous, especially when you bet on him, especially like how much I bet on him last time. But even with all that, he should absolutely win this unless he completely self-destructs. Paul Craig is a specialist. That's exactly what he is. His entire game is built around one move, the triangle from the guard. It's legendary. Absolutely no doubt. It's all just one lane highway to victory, though. Let's be honest. If you can't pull that off, there's not much else there. His striking is very weak. His chin is very fragile. And at this point, he's very much past his prime. He's 37 years old. And moving back up to 205 might help him a little, especially after that awful middleweight run. But honestly, the damage has already been done, in my opinion. Here's where it gets dicey, though. Bellato will shoot for takedowns. That's just who he is. And that's dangerous because the only way that Craig wins this fight is if you play into his guard. But if Bellato doesn't shoot, and if he keeps it standing, I don't see how he loses there. Craig has no real striking threat, and he's just chinny. Let's just be honest. And let's not forget either that this guy lost a full striking match to Bo Nickel. That says a lot, In the end, this is a pure fight IQ test for Bellato. If he passes, he wins. If not, well, we've seen what Craig can do to just about anybody. Let's be honest. I got Bellato by knockout round 1. I think this is an IQ test. Like I said, Bellato should very much win this fight. But I also don't foresee myself not sweating it if I bet it, kind of thing. I'm going to sweat it. He's just dumb. But I do got Bellato first round knockout. Up next on the card, we got Alonzo Menefield versus Oumar Sy. Menefield comes to this 16-5-1, 37 years old, 6'0" with a 76-inch reach. Oumar Sy comes into this undefeated at 11-0, 29 years old, 6'4" with an 83-inch reach. Sy is a massive favorite here, but I truly think that these odds are just way too wide. I think he's still very green, and we haven't seen just enough of him at this level to justify being -400 or even higher. And, let's be honest. Alonzo is a tough guy to trust too, let's be honest. But he does have one thing going for him, and that's takedown defense. It's arguably his only consistent skill. He's strong, athletic, and has good hips. Even if you take him down, he usually pops up very quickly. That makes things tricky for Sy here, who's clearly the better grappler, but will need to work hard to secure and maintain dominant positions. Menefield's biggest problem, though, is just he's not technical. His striking is all about power, wild looping haymakers with absolutely no setup. If you brawl with him, he can hurt you, but if you stay composed and technical, he becomes very predictable and easy to outstrike. His chin is questionable, and he doesn't react well to clean shots. I think that's where Sai has a big edge. His striking still looks very clunky, robotic, but he's improving very fast. In his last fight against Jung, he actually looked pretty solid on the feet. He used his reach well, kept things long, and avoided big damage there. All good signs, of course. Compare that to Menefield's last fight, where he struggled in a striking battle against a very, very raw Walker. Walker was doing more damage and pushing the pace, and honestly, probably should have won. That's a red flag for Menefield here, because Sai brings a similar style to as Walker, just better absolutely everywhere. The key difference in this fight is his athleticism. Menefield is used to being the bigger, stronger, and more explosive guy, but Sai actually might beat him there. He's long, fast, and powerful himself, and that alone can throw Menefield off. I doubt Sai will dominate with takedowns either, but that doesn't really, I don't think he needs to. His reach and improving defense should let him pick Menefield apart from the range, and if he does get the takedowns, he's very much dangerous. He finished guys with ground and pound from body triangles before, and again, even if this stays standing, Sai can win just by being more composed and technical. That being said, Menefield's still a puncher's chance, absolutely always. If Sai gets stiff or backs up in a straight line, Alonzo can absolutely crack him and end the daylight for him. But I think that outcome is absolutely very unlikely here. I think my prediction has to be that Sai ends up finishing this fight here in around maybe second or third round finish. He might eat a shot or two early, I believe, but once he finds his rhythm, I think that's when he starts tagging Menefield and either overwhelm him or put him out absolutely clean. I don't like that negative 400, but I do see him being as a nice parlay piece. Give me Oumar Sai, round 2 knockout. Up next on the card, we got Cody Brundage versus Mansur Abdul-Malik. Brundage comes into this 11-6, 31 years old, 6'0", 72-inch reach. Meanwhile, Mansur Abdul-Malik comes into this undefeated 8-0, 27 years old, 6'2", with a 79.5-inch reach. I think Mansur Abdul-Malik is definitely still raw in certain spots, but this guy is an absolute freak. There's no doubt about it. I really think there's nothing else to say about him. Let's be honest. He's massive, he's explosive, and he hits like an absolute wrecking ball. This UFC, I think, chose very wisely to pace him through his matchups. I think he just needs experience to round out his game, and I think Brundage is a really good matchup for him, and I think they're, like I said, pacing him out really well. I think they understand what they have with Mansur Abdul-Malik because he's so raw. They don't want to toss him in at the lines like they just usually do with any other very, very high prospect. His last bout was very strange. He was clearly outclassing his opponent, but barely moved in round 1. He even took a spinning elbow that was coming, and somehow he survived it, but maybe it was nerves, and I think maybe it was a game plan change at cage time. I don't know, but it didn't make a ton of sense to me given his edge in absolutely everywhere, in every area. But let's be honest, it showed that he can absorb some damage and bounce back. Cody, he's had some flashes, some slam KOs, and some odd submissions, but his wins are often lucky, not really earned. A slam KO on Reese, a surprise guillotine, a mouthpiece, timeout saving him. It's chaos-based success kind of thing. It's not consistent performances. He's been rocked nearly flat in recent fights and only survived due to, luck or pauses. Not really purely on skill. Stylistically, Cody brings nothing that should threaten Mansur Abdul-Malik. His wrestling won't stick. Mansur is just too explosive. He's just too strong, and he scrambles very well. If Cody tries to take him down, I expect Mansur to just really muscle him out and capitalize with brutal ground and pound, and once Mansur Abdul-Malik is on top, it's basically game over. His heavy hitting ground game is one of the nastiest out there. Unless Mansur completely falls asleep, shoots into a bad takedown, or has a defensive brain fart like he did in his last fight, I think this is all him. He's just faster, he's just stronger, and I think he's smarter and downright just scarier in absolutely every facet of fighting. I see Mansur Abdul-Malik walking through Cody Brundage and finishing him with a highlight reel knockout, probably in round 1 or 2. I'm probably gonna go round 2 because he's probably gonna be a little bit nervous again. But I think this guy's gonna be a rising star. Give me Mansur Abdul-Malik for round 2 knockout finish. Up next on the card, we got Cody Garbrandt versus Raoni Barcelos. Garbrandt comes into this 14-6, 33 years old, 5'8" with a 65.5-inch reach. Barcelos is 19-5, 38 years old, 5'7" with a 67-inch reach. I think this fight is a lot more nuanced than people really think. And honestly, I think the betting line is a lot skewed by recency bias. I do understand that Cody's coming off of a loss. He looked sharp early, but ended up being submitted on the ground. And let's be honest, yes, Barcelos just pulled off an absolute dominant upset over Peyton Talbot. But I don't think we should just assume that means that Barcelos is going to steamroll over Cody. Talbot's a promising prospect, but he is still raw, and especially on the ground. Barcelos exposed that, of course. If you go just by one fight, Barcelos struggled to get takedowns and even got out-grappled before landing a good shot and finding the sub. His wrestling looked elite last time out, but that was more about the matchup than a real evolution. Cody's not some jiu-jitsu ace either, but he's got some good takedown defense. And unlike Talbot or Quiñones, he actually comes from a wrestling background, so stuffing those takedowns is possible and crucial in this matchup. And then there's the striking. Cody's still fast. Even in his current state, the hand speed is still elite, and he's always had one-punch knockout power. Barcelos, on the other hand, has clearly slowed down. He's still skilled everywhere, but his explosiveness just isn't there anymore. He's not as durable either. He recovers well, but he's, been getting clipped more often and not by huge punchers. I do understand Cody's chin is always going to be a big concern. It doesn't take much to hurt him. And once he gets rocked, things can spiral very quickly. But I don't think, Barcelos is just not a knockout artist, so I don't think that's going to be a concern here. He is a clean striker, but he's not someone who brings serious danger with every shot. And I think that speed difference will be massive here. Cody might actually have the edge in striking exchanges. This fight isn't about who's the better fighter in their prime. It's about what's left in the tank for both guys right now. And I honestly think that Cody's got enough left in this to win. I do think Garbrandt can knock him out. I do think he's going to finish this one. I do think the odds are skewed towards Barcelos. I don't think he should be a favorite. I was texting my friend just now right before recording this, and he's telling me he does think that Barcelos should be a favorite. And I asked him why. He's like, Garbrandt's trash. And he's not wrong. Let's be honest. I think this is a low-level fight, but I gotta take the dog here. I don't see the value on taking Barcelos at -150 here. So I gotta take the dog. Give me Garbrandt. I do think he finishes him as well. So give me Garbrandt second round knockout. Up next on the card, we got Edmen Shahbazyan versus Ange Petroski. Shahbazyan comes to this 14-5, 27 years old, 6'2" with a 75-inch reach. Petroski is 13-3. 34 years old, 6'0" with a 73-inch reach. I do think that this fight is as binary as it gets. This is for sure striker versus grappler, and there's very little middle ground here. If Edmen can keep it standing, he's probably going to get a knockout. And if Ange can get his wrestling going early, I think he's going to be able to smother Edmen to a decision. That's really the fight in a nutshell. At first, I was shocked that Edmen opened up as a favorite. Petroski has been more durable and has better cardio and has shown he can grind out ugly wins. But then I rewatched the tape and I forgot how bad Petroski is on the feet. Striking hasn't evolved. He's still throwing basic looping hooks and there's almost no defense whatsoever. He doesn't move his head much. He manage range well, and worst of all, he really hates getting hit. That chin is not built for a war. Meanwhile, Edmen's fast. He's very powerful and throws straight down the pipe. His striking is clean, explosive, and way sharper than anything Petroski brings. He's not just more skilled. He's faster. He's more accurate and far more dangerous in the stand-up game. But Edmen's flaws are absolutely real. His cardio is a problem. And when he gasses, he absolutely falls apart and very fast. He's not someone who grits through exhaustion. He kind of just shuts down completely. That's always going to be a risk against the grappler like Petroski. And Petroski's a very good wrestler. He's got solid top control. He can chain wrestle together. And if he gets positioned early, he can absolutely dominate Edmen. He's not a huge submission threat, but his ground control could be enough to win rounds easily. Still, Edmen has decent first layer takedown defense and solid submission defense. His issue is the follow-ups. When opponents keep shooting, especially once he starts to tire, but early on, when he's fresh, that's when he's doing well. The kicking game could also be a real big problem for Petroski. He hasn't faced many guys who throw hard body or leg kicks, and Edmen can absolutely exploit that. I wouldn't be surprised just of a couple of kicks, just a couple could seriously compromise Ange's base or even end the fight here. Now, kicks can open up takedown chances as well. But the speed gap here is absolutely massive. I think it's going to be hard for Petroski to close the distance without getting lit up here. And based off of his history, if he eats something clean, he might just fold. We've seen him curl up and just check out before. In the Michelle fight, the hip KO, he does not respond well to damage. Edmonds, even with all his issues, has taken some serious beatings and never quit due to punishment. He quits from exhaustion, not fear, and I think that matters, So stylistically, it's a nightmare matchup for both in different ways. Petroski has a real path of grappling, and if he sticks to it, he can absolutely win a dominant decision. But I do think early going, it's gonna be very tough. The speed, the power, and the clean boxing. I think if Petroski doesn't get control right away, I think Edmond lands something big and puts him out. And I think it's gonna be in the first round. So give me Edmond Shabazian, first round knockout. Up next on the card, we got the co-main event of the night. Rose Namajunas versus Miranda Maverick. Namajunas comes into this 13-7, 32 years old, 5'5", with a 65-inch reach. Miranda Maverick comes into this 15-5, 27 years old, 5'3", with a 65.5-inch reach. And I'm not gonna watch tape on this fight, and I really don't give a crap. I think this co-main is dog shit. And let's be honest, Namajunas in 2025, I don't care. Her record speaks for itself at this point. 13-7. Would you be like, that is insane. I would never think that would be her record, but at this juncture in 2025, that is, which is crazy to me. She used to be my favorite fighter, and by far, where to a point if she lost, I was thinking about crying. I'm not being serious, but of course that's how much I cared. This woman, I don't know, man. I don't get it. I don't know. It's just that head kick KO on Weili. It's starting to feel like it was just a one lucky thing. I definitely think she's skilled. I think her striking is absolutely clean. I think she has fantastic footwork, but her mentally, she's an absolute wild card. She'll style early and then just stop. In that Blanchfield fight, she was cruising and then just absolutely disappeared after round 2. It's weird. It's just weird. I don't get it. I can't stand the fight against Carla Esparza. That's one of the worst fights I've ever seen in my life. The Fiorot fight, I could understand. She should be beating women against. She should be beating Hiba. She should be beating Tracy Cortez. And I don't know, man. She's got solid grappling, but her takedown defense is shaky. And at 125, she just doesn't have the physical tools. It looks like she's only here because she doesn't want to cut the weight anymore. And with Maverick, she's as frustrating as it could be. She came in with a lot of hype, but it feels like she's massively regressed. She's very young and she's still winning, but she's getting reversed. She's losing scrambles and letting low-level fighters hang in with her. And her losses were dominant, and even her wins haven't really shown improvement. I liked her a lot, and I made a lot of money on Miranda Maverick, but at this point, against the Rose Namajunas, what a dog shit co-main event, let's be honest. I don't think I'm watching this fight. I really don't care about it. I think it's going to be boring. I think it's a fighter who mentally checks out versus one who has zero fight IQ. Thankfully, it's 3 rounds, and I got Rose. Give me by decision. Whatever. Don't care. What a dog shit fucking co-main event. Oh my god. You know what the funny thing is? I was massive fans of these two girls, but they have massively regressed, and I just can't believe they're in a co-main event in 2025. This would have been a great one like in 2023. I mean, it would have never happened, but you get what I'm saying now. Dog shit co-main event. Up next on the card, we got Kamaru Usman versus Joaquin Buckley. Usman comes into this 20-4, 38 years old, 6'0", 76-inch reach. Buckley comes into this 21-6, 31 years old, 5'10", with a 76-inch reach. Kamaru Usman is finally coming back. And honestly, I don't know if that's a good thing. I actually think it's a bad thing. He's been gone for almost 2 months. For 2 years. And let's be honest, even before the layoff, the signs of decline were becoming very obvious. Now he's pushing 38. His knees are gone. His movement looks stiffer than ever. But he's incredibly skilled. But Father Time does its damage and does not wait for anybody. Now, he's stepping in against Joaquin Buckley, who's not just younger, He's faster, more explosive, and arguably stronger too. Buckley is on a massive run right now. And listen, he might not be the cleanest striker, and he might lack a lot of technique, but he makes up for it absolutely with his raw athleticism. He does everything wrong mechanically, but somehow it works because he's that fast, he's that powerful, and very unpredictable. Usman's jab is still sharp. I think he'll have moments early. His takedown defense should very much hold up for a bit, and maybe even snags around maybe. But the problem is he just doesn't have the same gas tank. The guy who used to weaponize pace simply isn't there anymore. And that's where Buckley shines. He pressures, he mixes in takedowns, and he keeps up, he keeps a rhythm that's tough to deal with. Even if he's not scoring clean, he's forcing movement, wearing guys down, and dragging them into deep waters. Durability is another red flag here. Usman's never had a weak chin, but it's been crackling lately. Let's be honest, in that Edwards rematch, he looked flat, he looked slower, and he looked less reactive and unable to push his usual pace. That's just not the strategy. It's just his aging, I don't think Buckley sparks him with just one shot. I don't. But I do think he chips away, ramps it up, and by round 4, Usman just can't keep up anymore. And I think that's when things start getting real ugly, and where either maybe a doctor steps in or Buckley finds a way to get him in a ground and pound situation where Usman is just too tired to keep up and his knees are just not there anymore to hold him up. I think this is an okay card, let's be honest. I think this is a good way to show that Buckley is ready to become the next guy. I think he's going to become the next guy very soon. He's in a division that's just very, very tough, though. So let's see how that goes. But I do think this is a good matchup for Buckley. Give me Buckley round 4 by finish. I do think he knocks him out. This should be a fun one, though. I think this is going to be a fun one to watch. But then again, Usman just doesn't have the knees to hold him up. 38 years old, 3 fights skid. It's just not the guy we're used to seeing anymore. Give me Buckley round 4 finish. Alright guys, that's going to do it for the breakdown regarding UFC Usman versus Buckley. I appreciate you guys sticking with me through the break. Feels good to be back, of course. Like I said at the top, I'm locking in a real schedule to make sure I'm posting every single week from here on out. So if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and feel free to comment your favorite plays for the card. I always like to see what you guys are at regarding bets-wise. Good luck on your bets, enjoy the fights, and I'll see you next week.